Good evening, good morning, good afternoon. Welcome back to my channel. I apologise I'm a day late, but in my defence, I don't have one. I had the best intentions of coming home last night and filming, but I didn't. I have given up with the temporary tattoos. I didn't even attempt it. I did actually get the sponge out ready to do it. But then I found these gems and thought, that will do, that will look cute. It looks like I've made an effort, which I have. It took me about 20 minutes. I hope everyone's had a lovely week. I know it's not been long since I've seen you. It was only on Tuesday. But I hope everyone's had a lovely week and has got lovely plans for the weekend. I'll be back again on Tuesday with another case. It's a very, very short one this Tuesday, but the Tuesday after it's a little bit longer. And then the Tuesday after that, it's even longer. That's what she said. So today I've got the incredibly frustrating case of Tiana Notice, which is a Valentine's Day case, and I can see myself getting angry already, so bear with me. Trigger warnings for today. Today's case does involve domestic violence, kind of stalking, harassment, coercive controlling behaviour. So if that's anything you don't want to hear or listen to at the moment, that's absolutely fine. I'll see you for another case shortly. Content warning as always, and absolutely guaranteed within this case, strong language. Tiana was born on the 4th of February 1984, and she had 3 brothers and a stepsister. She was born in Massachusetts. She was described as caring, compassionate, and exceptionally empathetic. She was also incredibly feisty, and her mum encouraged her to be a lawyer as she got older. She loved a good debate. While she was growing up, she was nicknamed by her family Hollywood because she was always singing, dancing, acting. She was exceptionally gifted in many ways. She'd also write her own poems, which is just beautiful. Not only was she gifted artistically, she was also gifted educationally. She actually ended up moving up 2 years in school, and she started college way earlier than she was supposed to. Tiana was said to be very charismatic, and she was also very trusting. She would always look for the best in everyone. At her college, the University of Hartford, she volunteered quite a lot at different women's aid charities, which is lovely. She graduated with a bachelor's degree in political science and wanted to go on to pursue a career in politics. In 2007, when Tiana was 23, she was working towards her master's degree. She would work full-time in the day and study all night. I don't know when this girl slept, but you couldn't say she didn't have a work ethic. Around this time, she ended up meeting a guy on MySpace called James Carter II, which the name is a red flag in itself. Tiana had just got out of a 5-year relationship, so she made it very clear that she was not looking for anything serious at the moment. But James was very charming. They chatted online for quite a while before they ended up meeting in person. James had a good job working as an executive at an insurance company. He owned his own house, owned his own car. He seemed to be very sweet and caring and treated Tiana very, very well. Not long after they met, he ended up buying her a new phone and put her phone onto his contract, so he was paying for it. He also bought her a new set of tyres for her car, which tyres can be incredibly expensive. I would be very grateful. This seemed to be a very much of a whirlwind romance, and Tiana was so excited for what the future might hold for the two of them. However, around 6 months into their relationship, James was arrested and sentenced to 6 months in jail. This completely shocked Tiana because she had no idea that this was going to happen. You would be shocked, wouldn't you? She was even more shocked when she found out why he'd gone to jail, and it was for domestic violence against his ex-girlfriend. And the whole time when they met, he'd been on bail and he just never mentioned it. This prompted Tiana to look a bit deeper into his past, and when she did this, she was even more shocked. He had a rap sheet as long as your arm, and all of the previous offences were for violence against women, domestic violence, assault, harassment. He had various different restraining orders that had been taken out against him from ex-girlfriends. But this didn't put Tiana off. Strangely, this didn't put her off. Like I said previously, she liked to see the best in everyone, and she still wanted to give him a chance and make up her mind for herself. However, when he got out, the two of them were constantly fighting. The police were called on, I believe, more than one occasion, and Tiana's dad said that he had seen him cheating on her. And after about a year of them seeing each other in total, bearing in mind for 5 months of that he was in jail, she called it quits. She'd had enough. Just because Tiana was ready to call it quits doesn't mean that James was. He started off with multiple calls, texts, emails, and when this wasn't working, he resorted to stalking Tiana. Tina would often see his car parked outside her apartment complex at all hours of the night. When she would leave to go to work or the shops, he would follow her. He would just pop up in places that she was. After weeks of this, Tina had finally had enough and she confronted him and said, just leave me alone, otherwise I'm going to have no choice but to get out a restraining order. Please just stop. However, on the 4th of January 2009, James filed for a restraining order against Tina. Now, because he had so many restraining orders out against him from ex-girlfriends, he knew how this worked. He knew how it all would pan out. So he decided to do it before she could. So it's essentially his word against hers. But you would think that police would take one look into his background and realise what kind of man this is. Don't hold your breath. James was accusing Tina of assaulting him. However, he had no injuries or no emotional distress from this. And Tina, of course, strongly denied this. A week after James had filed the restraining order against Tina, she actually went to the police station to file a restraining order against him. She said that herself and her family had received lots of threatening messages from James. After the restraining order was put in place, Tina then started receiving emails instead, and they were very threatening emails. They were all just rambling, but they all had the same sinister undertone. They'd say things like, trust me, baby girl, you're going to regret this, you're going to lose everything, God is my witness, punishment is on the way, so be prepared, you will have bad luck, you hear me, remember this email when come and bites you in the arse. The emails weren't sent by a email address that was called James, or they weren't signed off by James, but it was quite fucking clear it was James. They were actually signed off by a woman. The email address, the name was Jessica. Tina, of course, printed off these emails and took them to the police station to show them exactly what he was doing, what he was saying, that he was threatening her. And the police said that these emails weren't threatening, so he was not violating the terms of his restraining order. But surely he's violating the terms of his restraining order by contacting her in the first place. The police, however, did interview James about this, and he said that his new girlfriend Jessica was sending these emails because she was being harassed by Tina. But he had no proof of this, of course, because it wasn't fucking happening. But he had no proof of this, but this is what he said to the police. So the police just let it go. They just let it go, and they just left James to carry on with threatening and harassing Tina through calls, texts and emails. Over the next 6 weeks, Tina would visit the same police station 30 times, reporting and coming with evidence of what James was doing to her, all these calls, texts, emails, all these threats, everything. And just it's like no one was listening, no one was taking any notice, no one cared. For some reason, despite his extensive past of horrendous shit that this horrendous man has done, no one was taking it seriously. It's like no one bothered to even put his name into the database to see what he had previously done. Like, what is the point of this restraining order if you're just going to let him get away with everything he should not be doing? Because he is violating the conditions of his restraining order, but no one cares. It's baffling. Towards the end of January, Tina received a phone call from Bloomsville Police Department, which is around 20 minutes away from where she lives, so it's not the one that she'd been visiting hundreds of times. They were calling her about a letter that James had come into the police station with, and it was a photo of Tina and it said, hey, it's Tina, call me. And they thought this was weird because there's a picture on there, so why would you need to say it's Tina? So they had sent this off to the lab for fingerprints, because when James comes in with some evidence, they take it very, very seriously. But when Tina does, she's just, no one cares. Am I missing something? Another letter had been sent that was allegedly wrote by Tina, and this was one to her employer, which was incredibly threatening, which was obviously sent by James. But that was being investigated as well, because if it's a man reporting it, they take it really seriously. But if it's a woman who's concerned for her safety, they just don't care. The 7th of February, Tina came outside of her home and realised that all 4 of her tyres had been slashed. Now, James had brought her those tyres, so, I mean, who else is it going to be, really? Who else is it? It's James. Who else is it going to be? So she went to the police and told them this, and they just weren't even trying to hide that they weren't investigating it anymore. They said that there was no way they'd be able to find out who slashed those tyres, because they couldn't be bothered to try. There's plenty of ways you could have a go at figuring out who slashed those tyres, but they didn't. Tina was probably exhausted by this point. She was so scared and frustrated and upset, and she just didn't know what else to do, because the people that she's supposed to be calling to protect her weren't doing anything. So who are you supposed to turn to? Her dad ended up coming to her house to install a security camera, so if anything happened again, she would at least have proof of it, and then hopefully the police would do something. The day before Valentine's Day, James called Tina at work, and she hung up as soon as she realised it was James on the phone, but he rang all day. So when she left work, she went to the police to report this, and again, they just didn't give one single shit. They didn't bother looking into it, they didn't bother calling James in, and they actually said, "Oh, he called you at work?" And she said, "Yes." And they said, "That's out of our jurisdiction. Nothing we can do about that." What? So she let the police, Waterbury police, I think it was, that was in where her work was, she let them know what had happened. They told her, "Okay, no worries, go back to your office, we'll send some officers." No one ever came. 3 p.m, she did actually end up going back to the police station, and she was so upset by this point. Like, I can't even imagine how frustrating this whole thing must have been. She was begging the officers to help her. She was begging them to listen to her, to help her, to do something, anything. And then they said they looked on the system and they couldn't find a restraining order, so they accused her of it being fake. Oh my God. Like, is no one keeping note of anything? Like, when she's coming in all these times, is no one even bothering to put it on the system anymore? It's just disgusting. Tina left the station and she went home, and when she got home, she found a note had been pinned to her door. I'm going to read the note because we both know I can't remember it. The note said, "Tina, forgive me. I never cheated on you, and if you don't believe me, read Psalm 32. If I'm lying, may God take my life. I never cheated. Forgive me for everything else I have done." The tape in the security camera had run out, so there was no proof that James had done it. But obviously when he took a letter to the police, they're sending it off for fucking fingerprints, so they should do something, right? They promised that they would investigate and get back in touch with her ASAP, but big shock, they never did. I don't think they investigated it at all. Valentine's Day, Tina woke up to countless amounts of emails from James. But now these emails were from James's email address, and they were signed off by James. Some of the emails read, "God told me to write, so please don't tell the cops. I'm going through a life or death situation right now, and you're the only one I can talk to. You ever been so close to death you thought you were going to die? If I'm lying, may the Lord strike me down and kill me tomorrow. My dad said he had a dream that our neighbours gave us 2 tombstones at our house. Get rid of the restraining order." Tina printed them out, gave them to the police, and they finally seemed to be interested in helping poor Tina. They said that they were going to arrest James, and she was just relieved that they were finally going to do something. She called her friends and her family to tell them what had happened, and I can't even imagine the weight that felt like it had been lifted off her, and just how relieved you must be that someone's finally taking you seriously and finally listening to you. Now, this is the part of the story that makes me want to stick my head through a mirror or in an oven or anything else. It's the most ridiculous, stupid thing I've ever heard of in my life. If you've ever heard of an instance like this, please let me know, because I've never heard of anyone doing this before, and it's just... I feel like I lose brain cells thinking about it, because it just doesn't make a single lick of sense, okay? So, right, let me go. Around 8 p.m, a police officer rang James. They rang James and they told him that they'd be conducting a full investigation as to whether or not James had sent and wrote these emails. They said that if they found that he had, then a warrant would be issued and he would be arrested. I pray to God that this officer was sacked as a bare minimum, because what the fuck? You don't tell someone when they're going to be arrested. You don't tell someone when they're involved in an investigation. You don't tell someone when they're a suspect. What would possess you even slightly to do that? What made you think that was a good idea or that was necessary? At this point, there's already more than enough evidence to arrest James as it is. You don't need to pre-warn him. That's just giving him a chance to get rid of things. Are you thick? It's the most frustrating thing I may have ever heard. So Tina's mother had insisted that she stay with her for the night because she didn't feel like she would be safe at home. And Tina did go home. She went home to just collect clothes to stay at her mum's house for the night. And she had no idea that James was there already waiting for her. James had actually tried to call a locksmith to get the locks changed so he could actually get into the apartment. But when they got there, they obviously got some kind of feeling and said no. So James just decided to wait in like a bush for Tina. James ambushed Tina and he jumped out of the shadows when he spotted her and stabbed her 20 times. It was a horrendously brutal attack and he'd actually stabbed her through the heart twice. And once he had finished this, he left her to just bleed out. It had been less than 2 hours since he had received that phone call from the police. At 9:41 p.m, Tina actually somehow managed to call 911 and tell them what had happened and told them that she was bleeding to death. Her neighbours had heard her screams and they'd come out to try and comfort her as much as they possibly could, and you can hear this on the 911 call. Despite paramedics' best efforts, Tina had just lost too much blood and they couldn't save her, and she passed away at 11:45 p.m. James was arrested immediately and charged with her murder. He showed absolutely no remorse. He was calling her derogatory names and said that her family needed to be taught a lesson. The trial began of October 2011 and of course there was an overwhelming amount of evidence. Part of the murder was actually caught on CCTV. When he was found, he had Tina's blood on his clothes. The neighbours had seen his car. James's brother actually came forward to testify against him as well, saying that he had called him after he had killed Tina to say that he had stabbed Tina. His defence for what he had done was that he was driven to this due to emotional stress from the relationship. James was found guilty and he was sentenced to a minimum of 60 years in prison without the possibility of parole and 5 years for violating the terms of his restraining order. And that is the last of my Valentine's Day story. It's incredibly frustrating, this story, I think you'll agree, especially when I think there's more kind of awareness to it now, but that wasn't that long ago. That women just don't really get taken seriously in things like this, and they're only taken seriously when it's too late. Like, I don't think that would have happened if that officer hadn't have made that phone call to James, and I have no idea why he would do that. I have no explanation or no kind of even like argument back with myself why he thought that was a good idea, why that was necessary, why that was done. I just do not know. I cannot wrap my head around it. So if anyone has any theories about that, please let me know. I believe that Tina's family do a lot in her name, so every link I can find I will link them below. I think it's beautiful when families can take something so horrendous and tragic happening to them and try and do good for other people and try and prevent it happening to other people. I think that's the best thing that can come out of a situation like this, and I just think it shows what a strong, compassionate person you are. So I'll link all of those below. Oh god, I need a positive thought. I mean, my positive thought is I've just bought this book. I haven't read it at all. I think it's the first one in the series, but everyone's raving about the last one. So I have brought this book. It's a little bit ambitious, I'm not gonna lie, but I love a good read, so fingers crossed it's really good and I really like it. If anyone has any book recommendations for me, please let me know. I do love like fantasy books like that, and then I do love obviously true crime books. I've read a few books since then, but I love Katie Brent. Is it Brent? I think it's Brent. I love Katie Brent's books. How to Kill Men and Get Away with It, 10 out of 10. Then the sequel to that, I Bet You'd Look Good in a Coffin. I read that before it came out and it's amazing. And then The Murder After the Night Before. All of those books are insanely good. Like, you cannot put them down. They're brilliant. They're the best. Like, she's one of my favourite authors. And then also I read Haunting of Adelaide. That, I thought that was just a scary book. That is porn, but it's really good. It's really good. So I recommend reading that. So if anyone has any book recommendations along those lines, please do let me know. But until then, make good choices. Always believe people. If someone's making something like that, try and be there for people as much as possible. If that's one of your friends and they're behaving like that, Don't be afraid to put your friend in their place. Install security cameras. Look after yourselves. Don't get murdered. I'll see you next week. Love you. Bye. She wanna come and play Jenga. And I'm on the Henny and never get solved. Cheers. Cheers. I say, how the fuck you got do? I don't wanna talk about beef right now, but they're stepping on my toes. What, is that enough? It burns when I step inside it. You. There's fucking gems everywhere. The Red Bull's kicking in. And she said to be very charismatic. Fucking hell. Very Come on, you can do it. Great and pit. She said that she and his